and it's probably going to be good in archetypes we don't even know yet, especially with mech tribals and things, and the treant tribals, which we're going to talk about later. It's probably good in those decks.
He's going to be the angriest Snow Flipper penguin ever. Turn 1 penguin, floop as a penguin, boom!
3/4 penguin on board. Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head, Fire, but I think the really insane thing about this floop is that it's flexible. You know, a lot of combo cards, a lot of times need specific setups in order to have a really powerful win condition. This is not the case. This card is so dynamic, and the possibilities are endless. I mean, this could be a really big staple for all kinds of Druid archetypes that we don't know about, like you mentioned, the Treant Druid. Just very much like how Fandral is. It just goes in a lot of those Druid decks in the past, and it was just very flexible and dynamic of what it is.
It's just absurd. The setup for this is, in the Mali Druid, is you just play Malagos, which is a 4/12 must kill that's kind of a pain to remove. So they have to do that, and then you just hit them for 21. Like, that's a big number, and those are cards that you're playing anyway.
For sure. So Peter,
you can't actually do the penguin thing I was talking about, by the way. He still costs 4, so.
Oh, right.
But it would have been sweet if you could. I definitely
Tavern Brawl is gonna be possible.
Yeah, I definitely agree that this is a super powerful card in a lot of combo decks. I'm not as convinced that it's like no cost, like a lot of people seem to be suggesting. Like the fact that it interrupts your Oak Hearts, interrupts your Oaken Summons, like are both elements of putting this in your deck that means that you don't just run as smoothly in every matchup as you used to, with a lot of cards that are pretty core to a lot of decks that people are talking about using this card in. It definitely opens up potential to explode people without the ability to play around like by killing Twig and things like that existed before, and obviously the combo with like Arcane Tyrant is pretty powerful with Infestation, etc. But I'm not convinced that this is just like super nuts in the way that a lot of people seem to be. I do think it's definitely a high power card, but not like the game explodes because this card exists kind of card.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess my follow-up to that is if you play Master Oakheart and you pull this out, but you still have the Drukhari Enchanter and the Dragon Hatcher, I still think you're in a really good spot, regardless if you pull this format 3/4. But I do think that's a pretty interesting downside compared to what the normal Druid decks. Peter, I did want to ask you, like a lot of people talk about Druid in its current place and how it has so many powerful combos already existing in. So when you also have this card that's also very flexible that people look at combo Druid already, what's your response to that when people are like saying, yo, Druid doesn't need more combo cards?
Well, Druid's gonna get cards in every expansion, so there's gonna be 10 Druid cards. We're trying to
but
put
why?
things in.
Well, they already have enough, right?
Cards in. So we try to put in cards that are interesting in a bunch of different decks and things that push in new directions, like the Treant synergy things. Loop is awesome because he's one of those cards you experiment with. You try him out in a bunch of different places. He's good in a bunch of different situations. He also, like Kibler said, has some cost when you put him in your deck. So I think he's a lot of fun. He's a really cool card. He has a fantastic name.
The name is definitely the best part of this card. And it's going to be the hardest part of trying to cast this card.
Yes, thank you.
Do you call it Flipidinous Floop every time? You just call him Floop? Probably just call him Floop. That's like easy enough to remember, but...
Yeah, I basically just call him Floop when we were talking about him.
My Skype from the Omni channel called. I don't know what that was about.
Well, we're getting shut down. Well, we're asking too hard questions. We're getting shut down. But thank you, Peter, for at least being transparent about that. And actually, one of the things about this Floop is another card that I'm really excited about. Let's go ahead and real quick, Kibler said he thought it was like. Did you have any final thoughts?
I do think this is a 4 on this scale. I think this is a 4. I think it's super strong, but I'm not like the oh well, Druid is obviously the best class ever once it exists. Like I think that it does come with costs. It's not like outrageously broken, just very good.
Boards across the board. Looking forward to Floop a lot, and one card that I also think that I'm looking forward to, especially with this card, is the next one that we have. It's called Mulch Muncher. It's a 10-mana 8/8 with Rush. It costs 1 less for each friendly Treant that dies this turn. Now, Treants is not exactly something that we think a lot about in Standard right now, but there's actually a decent amount of Treant support. And Firebait, you're talking to me that you think this card could be really strong, if not just like one of the crazy things.
This guy's hero party.
It's almost a 4 for me. I think I'm settling on giving it a 3. it just needs a few more ways to create treants. You really only need to get 3 or 4 reductions on this guy for it to be worth playing for its cost. So, you know, this at like 6 mana is pretty good. You know, less mana than that is amazing. Being able to get it down to 0 is really great. There's some ways to create treants that already exist in Standard. You got Witchwood Apple, Soul of the Forest, Force of Nature, Cenarius, and then the big one, which is Living Mana. So, one of the best styles of decks where you want to play overstatted minions in, or just a bunch of stats on the table, would be an aggressive sort of deck that wants Temple on the board. So this gives you follow-up to Living Mana. You play Living Mana, and you have the threat of, you know, potentially killing them with the Living Mana treants with Roar and stuff like that. And if they do kill them, you get to play a bunch of 0 cost 8/8s onto the field that have Rush and then can kind of take the board really quickly. And they have that mech tag, which we're still kind of ambiguous as what mech is going to end up doing, but I'm assuming it's going to be beneficial at least a little bit. So that's why I'm ending up with a 3. If there's some more mech synergies or some more ways to create treants, later on we're going to talk about landscaping, another way to create treants, which I think is a very solid card, which is one of the reasons why I pushed it up to 3. It just seems like this card is a reason to play treants. It is so many stats. Living Mana is really good.
You know, well said. I think this gives a lot of those token-based treant decks a lot more finishing power if you can just place big threats. Think of it kind of similar to how Siege Giant works with token druid deck or token decks in general, where it just helps cement the board position where they have to remove like this plus whatever else you develop. And then, of course, there's like other combos we kind of mentioned, like Loop, which is not really like a big combo, but you have like Faces Manipulators, so you can play this with that and another one all in the same turn. You know, it's just kind of very reminiscent of just like having these big board floods and I win, you can't answer all things, and of course Savage Roar plus, you know, anything else you develop. It's really, really insane. Some of the things that you can think about with the Druid package right now. So, you know, I feel silly because I feel like, you know, putting it at 4 also is kind of too much. So I definitely agree that it's a 3, but it could push the 4 status if there's just even a little bit more treant support, because this card will be an all-star if that's.
And you were speaking of some synergy right before the show when we were talking about this card with Rodan brought up the Splinter Graft synergy, which is a card that's kind of unnoticed from Witchwood. It's the Splinter Graft's what? It's 10 mana, I think. 10 mana 8/8, and then it makes
8 mana. 8 mana.
Oh yeah,
8 mana 8/8, and then it creates a copy of a minion that is a 10/10. So you'd be able to play Mulch Muncher for 0 mana, then Splinter Graft it, and then get another one in your hand and play that one for 0 mana that's a 10/10. So you get 2 8/8s and a 10/10 on the field for 8 mana.
Right.
You know, so it's got some actual potential in Splinter Graft.
I'm not sure that I'm as high on this card as you guys are, just because like the incentive to build a treant deck feels like, you know, it may not be there right now. Like, yes, Living Mana is a powerful card, but in this card in games where you don't draw Living Mana seems like it's mostly going to be really useful. Like, it's just going to be super expensive. And like, if you're trying to play like a token deck, are you not better off trying to play like a, you know, Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest style token deck that's like ramping up and using Infestation at this point? Like, I agree that this is a good payoff if there's a good treant deck there. This is like obviously super strong when you're playing against other minion decks, but it feels like you're potentially going to be better off, you know, just looking to use the token stuff that already exists rather than pushing it on treants. So I would feel this is closer to a 2 in my mind.
Well,
I think it's cool. I think that maybe if there's enough treant stuff that, you know, ultimately does exist, I'm just not convinced that support is there yet.
Oh, don't kill him on real game.
From my experience with Soul,
Why wasn't he frostbolted?
it feels like that is like the final game plan.
He should have frostbolted
this actually gives it even more follow-up punch to it. And I'm never worried about consistently drawing a druid, you know, just because then you have so many good draws.
He's like a long
And
board.
Token Druid's shown that it can play a late game. It doesn't have to play like the old Token Druids of the past, where you had to like Mark of the Lotus and like all in very early. You can play a slow, drawn-out game plan, slowly build a threat in your opponent with just 3-4 minion, and then this could also have even more firepower. So that was the reason why I put it really high. But it's interesting that you think that it kind of goes too many different directions and you can't have a consistent game.
I mean, part of it is actually just like, I think the other things Druid does are so good that I don't know that this like sort of elbows.
Hey, why are you drawing so many cards? What the shit?
Like, you can do such powerful things by ramping up the ultimate infestation, you know, in a variety of
Oh, none of them were frozen anyway.
the other builds of Token
Bitch fucking killable.
Treant generators in your deck. It's not that I don't think that this could be powerful. I just don't think it's as powerful as the other stuff Druid is
Really?
Okay, that's fair. Why don't we go ahead and pull up landscaping as well, because I think Firebat mentioned it, and it kind of ties into how we discuss this card in general. 3 mana spell, summon 2/2/2 Treants, landscaping. I think this is like a really good support card for that archetype. This is what you're talking about, right, Firebat?
Yeah, this card's really good because right off the bat you're getting 4/4 worth of stats for 3 mana, which is above average and quite strong. It's divided amongst 2 bodies, which can oftentimes be a weakness, but in the
And
classic
the
Druid,
AI is like
it can
so
oftentimes
bad.
be actually quite powerful.
That's why they
Because
got
Druid's
it.
good at buffing minions, they have different tools to do that, like Power of the Wild and what have you. So,
Let's go.
and also it doesn't interfere with your 4 mana armor 6
Yeah,
card.
street crap.
Token summons.
Oaken summons, yeah. Sorry, spaced out on that one. But it doesn't interfere with your Oaken summons at all, which is quite powerful if you want to do something like Kid was saying, which is take it all, instead of playing it as an aggro deck, take it up to 10 mana. Well, now you can take it up to 10 mana while also playing landscaping and Oaken summons, so you're not actually losing as much, and then you can have the sort of like a different sort of endgame finisher rather than Malygos. Not saying it's better than Malygos, but it's just an option that's there for you. So, yeah, I think you can play it with Oaken Summons is a huge deal for the card outside of Treant Synergy too, because you just play this in a Druid deck and start running Oaken Summons. It is not a bad 3-drop. It is like the best 3-drop that doesn't interfere with Oaken Summons. So it gives Druid a 3-drop, which it has not had for a while.
Yeah, I think redundancy to Whispering Woods is really powerful, or even necessarily you don't need to even have Whispering Woods as much. You can maybe run 1 cop or something. But the idea is that landscaping is cheaper, which is much more flexible. So you have Violet Teacher, landscaping a little earlier, with like Power of the Wild. Like these kinds of things really help build a really powerful board. And then if they clear it, then you have a cheaper Mulch Muncher. So like all these different things kind of feed into each other. So I think this card's like a solid 2. I think it's a pretty nice card. Not like obviously great by itself, but definitely has good synergy with a lot of other things with what the Druid already has in their existing class deck. Peter, I want to kind of weave you in here. You know, when you're kind of designing these Treant stuff, you know, Druid already has a lot of great token packages already as well. So, you know, is this kind of like trying to push Druid more towards that token style approach, or is it just kind of open ended because you just really like having Druid have more thematic stuff based off their class design?
A little bit of both of those. So, as you said, Druid has a lot of stuff that they're doing already, so it's hard to say, you know, let's make a bunch more cards for the Malygos deck, let's make a bunch more cards for Taunt Druid. So instead, we're looking at what are other directions we can push Druid in, and Landscaping, Dendrologist, Mulch Muncher push in the Treant direction, which is a little bit different than the standard token direction. It's not just, I'm going to play a bunch of go-wide buffs, it's, I'm playing these particular minions that generate a bunch of tokens, and then I'm going to play these big guys to finish with. So it's trying out this, like, a slightly different package that you can experiment with in a bunch of different stuff. And I think Landscaping is a good example, like you mentioned. It doesn't conflict with Oaken Summons, so it's interesting to try out in a variety of things.
Yeah.
A question that I can see a lot of people in the chat have, does Nightmare Amalgam count as a Treant?
It does not. The Treants are just the 2/2s that say Treant.
Interesting.
Alright. Fair enough.
Because it's not a tribe. It's not a tribe.
It's not.
Okay.
Cool.
I
Actually,
Amalgam a mech? He is a mech, right? Or is he not?
Yeah.
He is a mech.
He is a mech. That's what I thought.
Magnetic amalgam law, which is pretty scary to think about. You brought up Dendrologist, so why don't we go ahead and pull up that card, because it kind of all ties in together with the Treant package, which is, you know, makes sense when you guys released it that way. Dendrologist, 2 mana, 2/3, battle cry. If you control a Treant, which means it's on the board, discover a spell, obviously from the Druid class. Wow, so this seems like a 2 mana, 2/3 with a lot of upside, although it does have a condition on it, so if you play it on curve, chances are you're not going to get that spell. But still, you know, Druid spells are some of the best in the game. You're talking about finishers like Savage Roar or Ultimate Devastation or card draw like Nourish, Branching Pass. It's like, man, Druid spells are some of the best quality in there, so this card already makes me feel like it has a lot of potential as well.
One of the issues is there's no Wasting Treant, which is kind of a problem for this card because it costs 2 mana. So you really want to just, especially in Treant style decks, from what we've seen so far, Treant style decks seem very tempo oriented. There are a lot of things that are just like stat piles. So you kind of want to play it board if you can, and it's really difficult to do that. Druid really doesn't like having 2-drops because they wild growth a lot of the time, and potentially biology project. So 2-drops aren't usually somewhere where Druid really wants to actually play a minion. So I think it's really hard to see this have too much play with the current support unless there's a 1-drop treant introduced into the game.
Yeah, I feel pretty similar to Firebat. I think this card's interesting, but I think that it falls into a weird role in terms of what the deck wants to do. At least, from what we've seen so far, obviously there's more cards, maybe there's more examples that seeing 3 treant cards so far kind of all seem to push in the direction of get some stuff on the board, use that to your advantage, and it's hard to imagine like wanting to just go, River Crocalist as part of that.
I give it a 2. I'm hopeful that, I think you have to give it a 2, because if ever a 1-mana treant gets printed, suddenly this guy's real. But till that happens, I think it's useless.
Yeah, I'm playing Wild Growth on 2, or looking to do it very often. This is more of like an interesting mid to late game card. But what this card could potentially do is give the aggressive token druids potentially a way to actually have those mid-game burst combos, because one of the big problems that those token druids used to run into prior to station was card draw, right? They'd basically be trying to top deck the Tavern Brawl at the very perfect time with living mana on the board, if they even had mana to play it. So this actually does give some interesting late game scenarios. Like say you play living mana, most of the time you'll have 1 or 2 mana crystals anyway, so this helps give you some potential way to follow up on that. But outside of that, the existing token druid stuff feels really good. So if you want to make a dedicated treant deck, this goes into it, but it's like Firebat said, I think it needs a lot of support in order to really be like that big, heavy alt that we're looking for.
It's kind of weird on our rating scale, because I don't think it needs a lot of support. It needs like 2 1-drops that are treants, and then you're done. That's all the support it needs, but I guess 2 cards is considered a lot of support. It's kind of weird. Yeah, it needs very specific support.
So I think we're all in agreement here, the 2s across the board. But again, could be solid. We'll see what ends up being more released. Depends on the treants. But the treants druid does look like very promising archetype just off our first initial impressions here. So let's push this up to the paladin class. We have one of our old good buddies back, Annoyatron, the form of Annoyo Module, magnetic divine shield taunt. 4 mana 2/4. Why are you guys bringing back Annoyatron's period? Was it not enough in Goblins versus Gnomes? The constant defense you can't get through.
Everybody loves Annoyatron. He just makes everybody happy. Just so happy all the time. So we brought him back.
You need better focus group members, Peter.
Well, we just pulled the guys in the office around us, so they loved Annoyatron. People made Annoyatron plushies. There's all sorts of great Annoyatron stuff.
Right.
Really, it's a fun thing to be able to do. To have a Divine Shield taunt minion in general is a pretty healthy thing. People have to interact with it. You get to play some defense. And we wanted some magnetic cards that granted keywords, especially the combat keywords like Divine Shield and Taunt. And so this was a pretty natural fit. It's try and figure out which mech you want to put your Divine Shield Taunt on. You can make any mech as annoying as you want.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think that this combination is particularly powerful with magnetic. Magnetic Divine Shield, if you just have a mech on board, you're going to play something that's around the same size. It's okay, magnetic this onto it, kill your guy, my guy's still full statted. That's really powerful. I think that this is going to be a really strong card in any kind of mech magnetic deck. Obviously, we don't know quite how much support that overall strategy is going to get, but with Zillions, with the Endless Army, which we're going to talk about today, it feels like there's a good amount of it so far. So I have high hopes for this guy. I also love, by the way, that stat-wise, he's just 2 Annoyatrons stuck together.
Right. Exactly.
I wish the art was just 2 Annoyatrons.
They're 2 Annoyatrons magnetized.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I mean, you kind of talked about it already, Gilbert, so, going back to what you were saying, Nightmare Amalgam is already kind of a fearsome thing, and Paladin is a deck that can really thrive off of existing boards with things like Unidentified Maul, Sunkeeper Terran to help push further damage from smaller minions. So this could already go into some of those, very fast Paladins. Instead of, the Murloc Paladin that builds synergy, you have Mech Paladin that builds on this existing synergy and just dominate the board very early on. So this card is very scary to play. You just have one more stick, like you said, proactive trades, or even just hard to get through while the other bigger threats stay behind the taunts. It can get pretty scary pretty fast.
Oh,
I am
only
less
one
excited
really.
about this card. I think the current mechs in the game are really bad. And looking at like Harvest Golem, Unpowered Steambot, Alarmabot, Demolisher, Scorpomatic, Meat Wagon. So there's not a lot of potential.
Hey, you
cards
take
that are
that back.
already
Meat Wagon can summon another minion with this magnetic stuff.
Ooh,
there.
yes.
So,
I
yeah,
didn't even realize
so
Meatbag
then
was a mech. We're gonna slap stuff on there and get it going.
the current mechs we have, like Faithful Lamai and Upgradable Frame Bot, that have been kind of added with this expansion, are both like super low attack, super high health, so they can't really use the low attack, high health buff as well as something with. This wants to pair with something with high attack and low health, you know, to try and be able to take value trades with the Divine Shield effectively. And I kind of compare this as a buff card to Blessing of Kings. Is it better or worse than Blessing of Kings? And oftentimes, I would say I'd rather have Blessing of Kings because of the offensive potential, but, you know, maybe there's a scenario where you're snowballing the mechs. If the mechs are really good, then maybe this is okay. And as a standalone minion, I think this card's pretty awful. It's a 2/4 Taunt Divine Shield, because most of the time it's using it in a control deck to try and suck up 2 attacks. You'd much rather have an Annoyatron, because they're both do the same thing, but this one costs twice as much for sucking up attacks as a defensive option. So I'm saying this guy needs a lot of help. I give him a 2. I think the buffing and snowball potential of mechs is really all he's got. As a standalone minion, he's super weak. But if there are mechs that can value trade early on, like Nightmare Amalgam is the main exciting one with it, then there's more of those on 3 coming down, then you can really snowball mechs and just make use of the strong magnetic mid-range guy.
I would be really surprised if we don't see any more, like, just mechs that we can, you know, slap this on. Like, literally, we're stuck with Framebot and, like,
Yeah,
you know,
that's it.
Right,
Taylor.
I know.
No
I
more
know.
mechs.
There's gonna be more
Be
mechs.
released.
So-
That's why I'm saying it needs a lot of help. It needs a lot
It
more
does.
mechs, though.
It does.
It needs to. You need to be able to have a curve of mechs from 1 through 3 to, I think, justify doing this. And even then, I think a lot of the times, kingsing something and hitting them in the face is just going to be a lot better. Because the 4 attack bonus from kings to be able to close the game before they get to their late game spots where they get stabilized with things like spreading plague and, you know, defile combos and stuff like that is important. You need to be able to kill them before they reach their late game stabilization points. And this guy's not very fighty.
Yeah, but you can't bring Blessing of Kings back with Kangor's Endless Army now, can you?
Right. There's
That is
there's
true.
a factor with that for sure. That's we haven't even gotten to that card yet, but that's why I think if there's some support, you know, then there's gonna be a reason to play it. But right now we have like 6 cards, 7 cards I want to play with this, so it's like we're gonna need a lot more mechs, which is
Yeah.
we got 100 more cards to go, so you know hopefully we'll see them.
All right. I'm definitely in line with the 2 as well, because I do think it needs a lot of support. But I think I have a more optimistic 2, and Firebat has a more pessimistic 2. Let's go ahead and
I'm
bring
going
up.
with 3 here. I think this is.
You're going with
I think
3?
this is yeah,
Alright.
I would be shocked if there isn't enough support for like this to be good. And I agree that most of the time as a pure buff, Blessing of Kings can be better. But the fact that, you know, a lot of times your board gets cleared and you can't Blessing of Kings something on 4, you know, against like an aggressive deck. This is a really good card then. You know, yes, against control decks, you'd way rather Blessing of Kings your, you know, your recruit or whatever. But against, say, Zoo, like, this is actually a pretty obnoxious card for them to try and attack into in the middle stretch of the game if you have any kind of, you know, support to do incremental damage to the rest of the guys. So I think a lot of times people underrate the flexibility of a card that can be either or, and I think Magnetic as buff or minion is pretty powerful fundamentally.
Alright, let's go ahead and bring up Kangor's Endless Army. This is a card that you guys revealed very early on in the stream.
As we learned in the stream, it's very good against Brawl. He's brawling.
Ziliax.
Yeah, great with Ziliax as well. Man, I mean, is this kind of inspired from the anything can happen? We're kind of talking about Murloc Paladins and Mech Paladins, how they have similar like ideology in building the board and then having some dominance late game with this card. Is that kind of an inspiration feeder at all?
A little bit. This is more when you got the magnetic mechanic. What are all of the cool things that you can do with magnetic? And one of them is let's do a resurrect spell that brings them back. So that was really the core of this was let's experiment with all of the different possibilities for magnetic, and this made a lot of sense. And then it made a lot of sense with the Paladin Legendary spell. It's pretty awesome.
Right. And Paladin is, you know, definitely more of that board flood type of class in general. So it seems like it thematically fits. And we've also had the Murloc card we mentioned in the past, anything can happen, which which for people who don't know, used to summon back any Murloc that died this game, assuming you had enough to fill the board. And it lets us some really powerful combos with Chargers. So I imagine that this is very much the same thing. It's a finisher card, like top end, or it's the top end of a fairly aggressive mech paladin deck, or tempo oriented. Maybe both. Who knows? We don't know if there's any mechs that have charge, but this does seem like a very solid card, and exactly what you're looking for in legendary spell. So I definitely give it a 3. Oh, sorry. What's up?
I wouldn't count in any charge mechs. I think
Okay.
that's less likely.
Sure. And thankfully too, because I like Rush a lot better than the charge for this kind of card.
I actually have a question that I didn't think of during the stream yesterday. So they keep any magnetic upgrades. Does that include upgrades? Like if they got silenced before they died, do they have that the upgrade that was put on them, or no? Do you think have one?
I think it's just the ones they have when they die. I'm not 100% on this now.
My understanding is if you connect Valinir to a magnetic minion, then magnetic that to another mech. If that dies, do you get the Valinir magnetic onto the thing too?
I believe yes.
Ooh.
I believe it gets to keep hand buffs, but again, not 100%.
The hand buff paladin dream lives on, Kibler.
Forever.
Forever.
Did you? I forgot if you asked this on stream, but if you resurrect a mech that appears to the left and it's magnetic mech itself, is it attached to the minion so it only has like 2, for example?
No, magnetic only happens when you play it from your hand.
Okay, just to clarify. Still, I give this a solid 3. What do you think, Firebat?
I think with the current pool of mechs, it's like a 1 or a 2. But I think undoubtedly it's going to be a 4 at some point. I think this is like almost no way, like all they have to do is just print a bunch of mech cards, and then at some point this is going to be a 4 if there are a decent handful of playable mech cards that you can play in a curve and then play this on turn 7 and just out-tempo people and win the game. The amount of value that you're potentially going to get off this is pretty absurd, and yeah, it's kind of cool playing around with the magnetic in a way. So like if you have a bunch of small minions die in the early game, it becomes really bad, but if you're able to kind of guarantee that they become bigger against control, you can try and make sure that against controlling decks you only have a few minions die that are really big, so it kind of changes the way you play your aggro mech deck, which I think is really cool, because sometimes aggro decks can become a little bit repetitive, and you just play them the same exact way every single time, whereas this one, now you have to think, well, do I want to just play out all of my mechs 1, 2, 3 in a line for tempo and risk some of them dying as 1/1s, or do I want to try and force everything to be really big so I can outvalue people with this card in the late game? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I love the sort of gameplay that this really encourages, because you really, as both the player who is using it and someone who thinks they may be playing against it, you need to think about like how you kill your opponent minions. Because like for instance, if you're the person playing this, you really want to get your guy with Billions attached to it killed. You don't want it to get silenced or like transformed, because you really want to get that back when you get your Kangaroo's Endless Army. So, and obviously vice versa. If you're playing against it, you want to try and ensure that you don't just kill their biggest thing necessarily. That biggest thing can come back with all the magnetic buffs on it. And there being that kind of counterplay to this, I think makes it particularly interesting. I also just think it's good. I agree that like with what we've seen so far, it doesn't seem that powerful, but like much like with the what is it, Annoyo bot? I forget the name of it already.
Annoyo bot.
I think that there's definitely going to be enough stuff to make this good, and I expect it to be a 3 or a 4.
Sounds good. I mean, that's pretty cool. I think we're all over the board with how this card can be, which is what makes it really exciting. We have one more Paladin card, Auto Defense Matrix. It's a 1-mana secret. Whenever your minion is attacked, give it Divine Shield. Oh man, Noble Sacrifice is already annoying enough. But Divine Shield on a minion that gets attacked, whether by a hero with a weapon or a minion on the board, that card seems very annoying. And Secret Paladin actually did see some decent play in the Witchwood with the Bellringer Sentry. It was a card that I think a lot of people were sleeping on at first. And it did have some presence, when even Paladin and Odd Paladin were still kind of running rampant. It still had like, a little bit of underground stuff. So I think Secret Paladin might once again be like an underground deck that people don't necessarily play, and this could be what helps support it. I don't think it'll be necessarily super powerful, but it's annoying enough to be effective.
I was actually curious about how this works